Good morning, everyone. Hope you had a really relaxing weekend. Yesterday was probably just a wonderful day for you. Let's begin with some announcements. First of all, homework 4 is due now. All the assignments should be on the chair here. Your next assignment is going to be homework 5, and that's due a week from today. And I've just given you the paper for that. It's here on the table. And we'll have a quiz on Thursday. The quiz on Thursday is going to include everything from the first quiz until Tuesday's lecture. And so it will include the topics from today and the topics from our next class period. We're going to do computer stuff again on Tuesday, so please bring your computer one more time. So any questions on the announcement? There you go. All right. Well, we've got a lot of good stuff to work on today. Thank you. All right, so let's review. Two of the functions we've looked at so far include the PV function. You haven't seen the FV function, at least we haven't used it yet. But it works similarly in that when you start typing the function, it's going to give you a prompt on what it's looking for. One of the reminders I want to tell you is that the interest rate needs to be added as a decimal. You know, in the problem statement, it may say I equals 7%. And so automatically maybe in your mind you're thinking to put the number 7 here in the first field. But that would be a mistake. If you did that, then it would think the interest rate is 700%. And of course that would be wrong. So you need to put 0.07 if it's 7% interest rate. And then you put n number of years, and what Excel is going to say is NPER. And I'm not sure why they chose that abbreviation for it, but what it means is the number of years. Does anybody remember why we have 2 commas there? Yeah, because what Excel is expecting to see in the third field is payment. And so this function can be used whether you're converting an annual series to a future value or if you're converting a present value to a future value. Now, what we're usually going to use this function for is if we want to find the future value of a present value. And so you would skip over the payment field with 2 commas. And then you enter in the present value. Now, I guess there's one more little hint that I should add here, and that is about the sign. Does anybody remember what the issue with the sign is? Yeah, the reason why is, so I'm going to say note, Excel assumes that a sign change occurs. So Excel assumes that if you're using this function, then you're trying to find out what the payment is when you had an inflow to you originally. So it's always going to have the opposite. If this is a positive value, it's going to return a negative value for the function, and vice versa. Okay, so all those same warnings and explanations apply also for the present value function. Any questions on that review info? All right. There's another function that's very useful called NPV. And it's similar to, in some ways, the rate function. We have seen the rate function, but I haven't shown you the NPV. And the way I say it's similar is that it sort of does the whole thing all at once automatically for you. And it's a very useful function except for one problem. Students are always making the same mistake over and over and over when they use this function. I know none of you are going to, because you're going to like watch what I do and avoid that mistake. But in the United States, I think they always are missing this one little hint. And so they misuse the function and constantly are losing points. So let me show you how the NPV function is used. Let me start up a fresh sheet here. So let's say that we have a number of years, year and amount. All right, and then we have here our interest rate. Let's say this is an example of 5% interest, okay? So we have this cash flow diagram, and let's say we already have 1,000 year inflow in year 0, and then next year we're getting 3,500, the year after we're getting 1,200, and then 1,000, 800. Okay. Let's say we want to have the present value for all of that. If we're looking to find out what is the present value for all of those amounts, the NPV function just allows you to do this, equals NPV, and then you click on the rate, comma. The warning that I'm telling you here is only include future values in this function. Okay, so let's go here. We don't need to do that. Not this time. Where are the future values? What are values that are in the future? Starting at 3,500 and onwards. 1,000 is already at the present. So this function, you should only select values that are in the future. So the mistake that most people make is once they've selected the interest rate, then they click on all the cells. But that's wrong. So never do that. You go like this. You just highlight things that are in the future and then enter. So this is the future value of, this is the present value of those future amounts. So let me write that. This is the present value of all the future amounts from year 1 through 5. And so if you wanted to know the total of all the present values, sum of all the present values, then it would be, this plus the one that was already in the present. Okay? So that's how you use the present value function. Now let's check it. You know the old-fashioned way that we were doing it before, where we were doing equals PV, our rate. Now this is where we do need to use the F4 function because we're going to be dragging downward. N, skipping over the payment, and then the negative of this amount that's in the future. Okay, so it knows this is already in the present. And we click it down, and now let's add up all of those amounts here. All right. So this is the old way that we've done before, and now you see how the NPV function works. All right. Any questions about NPV? Let's give it a shot. In your in-class exercise, I've given you a cash flow diagram, and what you need to do is translate this cash flow diagram into an Excel table like I've done here. So one column have the word year, and then all of the years under that. The next column have amount, including a negative amount if there is one, and there is. Above the year have I equals, and then above the amount have the interest rate as a decimal. On your paper it doesn't say. We're going to use 7%. So write on your in-class exercise, I equals 7%. And it looks like most of you have the computers you need to do this one. So go ahead and get started. I'll be circulating around to see how it goes. Let's take a look at the solution. All right, so we started off with needing to find the present value function. Let me show you that one. Okay, so here's my table. You put the interest rate is 7%. You type in all of the years and the amounts, and then you start calculating the present value with this function. So you need to refer to the interest rate and anchor that cell with the dollar signs. And then the next field that it's asking for is going to be N. And so N should be whatever row you're on. And then you skip over this payment field, leave it blank, because if you put this value, for example, when we're doing the equation down in the 5th row, if I had put that amount as a payment instead of a future value, then what it would do is it would say, what's the value of 5 years of 12,500? Instead of, what is the value of 12,500 in year 5? So it would do a P/A instead of a P/F. You know, what we're trying to do is a P/F. And so that's why we have to skip over this third field and instead tell it, this is a future value I'm taking to the present. And we do the negative sign. One thing I'll mention is that by default, I think if it's negative, it turns it red. If you don't like that, I don't like it. If you also don't like it, you can click on this and then go to currency. And then it will change it a little bit more normal. But if it doesn't bother you, that's okay. And so the answer to part A is then to sum up all of these present values, and you should get 78,260. So who has questions about that first part? In part B, it should be just a validation of the first one. NPV, where the rate is this. Let's highlight, let's see. Okay, so the rate here in blue, 0.07, and then it's going to be all of the amounts. So don't have it do the present values because these are already taken to the present. Have it highlight amounts that are future amounts. And then it will return 78,260. And so if you did have some amount already in the present, then you'd have to add separately that amount that was in the present. Okay. So that's problem 1. Yes? Okay. Didn't work? All right. I'll help you in just a minute once I get everybody started on the second problem. Let's take a look at that second one. Now you're going to use the future value function. It's very similar to the present value function. So on a separate tab, separate worksheet, you know, create another page. Type in this cash flow diagram, and we want to find out the future value. Now, as a hint, I'm going to tell you the columns that you need to have for this problem, because it's a little bit tricky the way it works. And so for this one, have I equals, and then type in the interest rate, have time, years until year 16, amount, and then FV. Okay, so let me make this wide enough here. Okay, so you're going to have 0, 1, 2, and so on. In year 0, how many years is it until year 16? All right, so 16. In year 1, how many years is it until? 16. Here, did I type it wrong? Okay, 16, and then 15, and then 14. And then we start putting in the amounts. Like here is 10,000. And then here is a 0, here is negative 11,500, and so on. Okay, so the reason why we're putting this years until year 16 is because equals FV. It's going to be asking you the rate, and so you click here for the rate. NPER. N means, you know, how many years is it happening? And so for a future value, it's wanting to know how many years into the future should you carry this amount. And so if it's in year 0, and in the problem, we're trying to take everything to year 16. So this 10,000, if you just clicked on the time, then it would say, take it 0 years. And that would be a mistake. The reason why we have the 16 here is if you look, we want to take the 10,000 from year 0 into year 16. So it needs to go 16 years. What about this negative 11,500? It needs to go 14 years, and so on. So we need to have a column that has the number of years that we're going to use for the field NPER. All right, so let me turn you loose on that. 8.5% for the second problem. Okay, let's look at the solution for this one. We've got to keep moving because we're running low on time. We had a few people coming in late and that delayed us, so I don't know if we're going to be able to get through everything. The second problem, we have the interest rate, we've got time, years until year 16, amount, and future value. And what you should get in the end is 3,820. So what do you think, if you think about the common mistakes, what's the most common mistake a student would make in this problem? They'd use either the wrong years or the PV. So, mistake way. A student who's doing a mistake would do equals FV, and then they do the rate, and maybe they'd remember to anchor it. But for N, they do this one. Usually what students do is they use the wrong N. So don't do that. Don't do the mistake way. All right, let's look at the third problem. And the third problem is a reminder of the rate function. The rate function is where you know the ins and the outs of the cash flow, and you're wondering what is the rate of return for the ins and the outs. And so in this problem, we have a cash flow where an investment is made of $45,460 up front, and then there's a positive cash flow of $7,500 each year in years 1 through 7. So just type that in and then use the rate function to find out what is the rate of return if you have this cash flow. All right, I want to show the solution before we run out of time. So let me just start from scratch and you can follow along if you haven't already got it. So you have the year, amount, and this one we know is in dirhams. So we type in 0 through 7. And there was negative 45,460 in the first one, and then 7,500. It turns out that having this table is just for us to look at as we type in the rate function. Okay, here's the important part. Equals rate, and we're going to do this manually. How many years are there of payments? 7 years, and you type in the payment amount, 7,500, and then it's saying, what is the present value amount? Type in negative 45,460. Close parentheses, enter. 4%, we want to see 2 digits of precision there, so it's 3.73%. You could have also highlighted some of the cells. So rate, okay, so N is 7, comma, the payment is this every year, comma, and then the present value is this one, and we close. Do you have a question? Yeah, so if you want to change the number of digits that are shown, go here under percentage, and you can either decrease or increase as you like. You just click on the location where the number is that you want. Okay. Now I know that you can't show me your spreadsheet that you've been working on today. So I've been walking around and I've been looking and everybody's participated, so I don't need you to email the file. Save the file for yourself as a reference, but just put the papers with your name on them on the chair on your way out. And I'll see you in class on Tuesday. Yeah, I mean, we just don't have the time.